so this is really around contribution. So I'm Steve Millidge. Basically, we work for C2B2. So in London, we run the GlassFish User Group. And we've also started a project called Pyara, which I won't mention too much.
Well, I believe it. I think it's legitimate.
Okay, which is essentially around open source support and building contributions on GlassFish core open source project. So we have a booth and we have t-shirts. That's about it. You want to introduce yourself?
Oh, you can go ahead.
I don't know. We got Reza Rahman, who's basically evangelist for Java EE in GlassFish, is that right?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's the title. And so what we're going to look at, Reza's going to do a bit around the GlassFish roadmap, how to contribute, and I was going to do a very, very simple demo of how to build GlassFish, because it is very simple to build. And then I was going to ask some questions about what would make you contribute and what features you'd like to see. I'll edit the slides while you tell me all your wonderful ideas. So this is basically why I feel we need contributions. And I'm not from Oracle, obviously. We run the GlassFish User Group, but we also provide consultancy on a lot of Java EE middleware. One thing I think about GlassFish as a Java EE guy is that it's actually an excellent open source application server. It was, it's very modern. It's got a modern OSGI kernel, and therefore deserves, attention and deserves the success that it has. And I also think we need a strong open source, production-ready Java EE 7 application server. Otherwise, I worry about the future of Java EE itself if developers can't take an open source application server, play with it, build things on it, run it in production without then going off to spend a lot of money. And we also need that level of competition in open source Java EE. Personally, I don't believe that Wildfly is enough to have as the only sort of open source full Java EE 7 application server. There's Tommy out there, which is mainly focused around web profile, although David might disagree. And from my perspective, as a independent company, GlassFish 5 is probably a couple of years away. So the danger is there's going to be a hiatus there, and I think that hiatus could cause sort of Java EE development to sort of potential developers to slip away a bit. So that's why I think we need contributions. So basically, Reza's going to go over a bit about GlassFish and its roadmap.
Okay. I don't know if this mic is making a difference, but I'll speak into it anyway. So I think we all know that there is no more Oracle commercial support for GlassFish 4 and beyond. But we also know that companies like Steve's are stepping up and providing commercial support for GlassFish. GlassFish 3, just so for sake of completeness, continues to have commercial support from Oracle, and of course, Oracle's primary vehicle for commercialization of Java EE is through WebLogic, and of course that's certainly not an open source product, as Steve pointed out. The thing is that although these may sound like not so positive things, the reality, even from Oracle's perspective, is GlassFish is very much alive. So folks out there that sort of went around and saying GlassFish is dead and the like, personally it was, I think for all of us at Oracle, it was very disheartening to see that. But it was also heartening to see that not everybody had that point of view. Some people actually did have the proper point of view of seeing what really was happening. So GlassFish open source, make no mistake, will continue, and it is an important part of Oracle. By the simplest fact that it continues to be the reference implementation. But it's a bit more than that also. As Steve again pointed out, there is a risk that if we do not keep GlassFish vibrant and a strong open source product, we will see deceleration of the Java ecosystem generally. So for that reason, as we've demonstrated with things like GlassFish 4.1, we still have a focus on community, we still have a focus on usability, we still have a focus on innovation and evangelism. So Those are all key things, and I don't think there's any gap or any conflict whatsoever as to us in the GlassFish team and the GlassFish community at large. One thing that I guess out there in the community folks don't realize is that GlassFish's intent has always been very community driven. We've always been, we've tried to be as contribution friendly as possible. Think about it, why wouldn't we, right? I mean, basically, somebody else spending their personal time working on our software is only to our benefit. Right? Even if it's an indirect benefit, it's still a benefit. So we definitely have had that as our focus going forward. That's why I'm here trying to do this talk, and why I also believe that contributing to GlassFish is incredibly important. So the question is a bit about, for those of you who aren't aware, I'll just speak about a little bit about GlassFish 4.1, principally to set some context, right? So if you buy the argument that GlassFish is dead and it's just a toy for reference implementation, then GlassFish 4.1 should be reason for you to pause and think otherwise. Right? So what were the things in GlassFish 4.1 that we released, I guess about a month ago now, or rather a few months ago. So principally, it is a lot of bug fixes, close to 1,000 bug fixes. So that alone should tell you that stability is important. Right? So we wouldn't bother fixing these bugs if GlassFish is just a toy. And you'll also notice that part and parcel of this is security bug fixes as well. And we'll work towards making sure that GlassFish 4.1 works with JDK 7, or rather JDK 8. The reason for this is to be developer friendly, is to keep the excitement and the engagement with the community, so the community can begin to see how Java EE 7 or perhaps Java EE 8 works with the features introduced in Java SE 8. And of course, there's a small number, I guess in the end it wasn't a small number, quite a few new features that came in via all of the constituent projects that we have in GlassFish. So some of the principal ones being Jersey, Muhara, and Tyrus and the like. And also hand in hand with GlassFish 4.1, GlassFish 4.1 also comes in NetBeans 8.01, right? So as we've always done, we're bundling a GlassFish release with a NetBeans release. Again, towards developer friendliness and keeping the community alive and vibrant. This is a bit about the GlassFish roadmap. I wanted you to know this. I think this is important for you to know specifically if you are going to seriously consider contributing to GlassFish. The primary driver for this is Java EE, right? But it's a bit more than that, as I mentioned, as I try to keep repeating. So we released GlassFish 4.1 a few months ago. We've already started work on Java EE 8. We'll see some of the early drafts come in midway through 2015 and so on. So you are correct. The final release of GlassFish 5 is going to be towards the end of 2016. But note I said final release. So that does not mean that this is the end of the story. You won't hear from us until 2016. So I think all of that is under consideration and things we can work with the community to figure out what the expectations are and what it is that we need to do to keep the community vibrant and strong and to keep the momentum behind Java EE that we have worked so incredibly hard. All of us have worked incredibly hard to maintain. So I personally don't think that's at risk, but that also doesn't mean that community contributions are not important nonetheless. Definitely that is not the case. So what are some of the ways to contribute? I think for those of you who might consider contributing, you might think, well, this is sort of a crazy thing and it's incredibly difficult to contribute to an open source product. Well, it's not quite so. The reason for this is contribution is a very broad term when you're talking about an open source product. It is not necessarily committing a new feature or committing a bug fix. Clearly that's a very important way of contributing, but it is by far not the only way of contributing, and frankly, perhaps not even the most important way of contributing to something like GlassFish, that is really the reference implementation, the driving vehicle for the Java EE community. So here's some of the other things you should consider, and I do actually put this in order of importance, certainly in my mind. First and foremost, being active on the forums. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, first of all, subscribing to the GlassFish forums, both the forums that we have at the GlassFish umbrella project level and all the constituent other projects. Subscribing to that and helping other people out. And frankly, we don't have much of that. Everybody that posts, non-Oracle folks that posts to the GlassFish forums are principally asking for help from us, from the Oracle folks, which we do try and provide. But that's just a one-way conversation, right? So that really does need to become more of a two-way conversation, and we need to see more people in the community, interacting with each other and helping each other out, especially on answering very basic things, which 80 to 90% of questions on our forums are very basic things. Right? These are, to be frank, not the best utilization of a GlassFish engineer to be answering these questions. Right? These are questions that can be taken up by the community. Same thing for forums outside of Oracle, right? So Stack Overflow being a very big one, Reddit being another big one. There's always discussions and questions around Java EE. There's always questions and discussions around GlassFish on those forums. And yet again, it's not really the best use of our time in the GlassFish team to answer these sort of questions. So this is a space that we really could use some help and could use some contribution from the community, to help us out. And the other thing is quality, right? So again, all of us being in IT, know this problem. So when you're developing software, you have a myopic view of what you're developing. You only know what you did. So for that reason, bug reporting and the entire process of the bug cycle for GlassFish or any other open source project is again incredibly important. Right? That is one of the key reasons why open source is stronger than proprietary software, is because it's easier to debug and fix through the community, through an open community process. So yet again, we need folks to try out GlassFish, try out features, specifically participate when we are asking people to participate via programs like Fishcat. Right? So while Fishcat is great, honestly, the response in Fishcat could be far better. Right? So it really, from our standpoint, it doesn't it's not quite at the level that we would want. Right? So this is you helping your future self, right? As a GlassFish user or Java EE user, participate in things like Fishcat and file bugs, right? And also, even for an existing bug, try and make that bug easier to fix. And how do you do that? You do that by taking in a bug and interacting with the person that reported the bug and making sure that its contributor is easily reproducible and narrowed down to the actual root cause. Right? Believe it or not, as a person on the other, has spent a decent amount of time in the other end of the fence, the biggest part of any software is not fixing the bug, not writing the 5, 10, 100 lines of code to fix the bug. Actually, a majority of the time, 70% of the time, is spent trying to decipher badly written bug entries and trying to reproduce what the actual issue is and narrowing things down. Finally, again, GlassFish is really all about Java EE. So another excellent way that you can help us out is via participating through the JCP, Java community process, participating through things like adopt.jsr, and tell us, what features we should have in Java EE. Right? So all of the standards that we may, all of the features that we may have in GlassFish, ultimately those are all standards-based features. So whatever you want. If you want a most effective way to produce a new feature or produce an RFE in GlassFish is really to work through these standards bodies and work through these vehicles that are already there, effective vehicles that are already there in the JCP, and make those features a reality. Okay? Also, engineering is one element of GlassFish. Another very large element of something like GlassFish or any other open source community is what our team does, or specifically what my very, very small team does in Oracle, evangelizing JavaOne, evangelizing GlassFish. So this is, again, an incredibly important thing that you can help do, that we really need help on, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to do. Right? So things like blogging about JavaOne, blogging about GlassFish, going to conferences and doing talks about JavaOne and GlassFish, being active on social media. All of these are very, very important and very, very good ways to contribute. Finally, getting a bit closer to committing things. Samples and documentation, right? Another very important element that often engineers, core engineers in GlassFish don't necessarily have a lot of cycles to spend on, right? And yet, incredibly easy thing to do for most folks, right? Anybody with decent writing skills can contribute these things. Anybody that has written JavaOne code or written enterprise code can easily contribute a useful sample. Right? So these are, again, good vehicles to contribute. And finally, of course, helping us fix bugs, helping introduce new features. So I don't want to minimize that. So I don't want to say that's not important. That is ultimately what, in the truest sense, people think about when they think about contributing to open source. So that is obviously one of the things, one of the ways to contribute. And we want those type of contributions. Right? So we're certainly not in the business of discouraging any of that. So how do you do this? This is, if you will, your black belt, right, in terms of GlassFish contribution. These are the general steps of what the average developer would do in order to contribute code to GlassFish. First and foremost, in order to contribute anything, you need to first explore and understand the code. So download the code, write some tests, do some debugging, figure out what this code is doing. And believe it or not, the GlassFish code is surprisingly readable. Okay, so a lot of the engineers that have been working on GlassFish are relatively conscientious folks, and they're good professional engineers. Right? So they've written relatively well-written code that most people should at least be able to understand over time, after spending a little bit of time investment. The second step is finding a developer. This is the reality of most open source projects, right? I really do challenge you to go find an open source project that you think you can contribute code and not have a cyclical chain of bugs introduced by the thing that you committed, right? So really, the realistic way of committing features, committing bugs, is really to find a developer. Probably a GlassFish, somebody in the GlassFish team at this point, right? And ask some questions, right? Interact with them to figure out how do I go about committing this bug fix or committing this new feature. Build, set up, and test, right? So that's another good sanity check. Take the GlassFish code base and instead of actually changing anything, just pretend that you are working on it and go through the steps of what a GlassFish engineer may do. Now, here's what some people find an irritant. Honestly, this is a mystery to me as to why this is an irritant. In order to contribute code to GlassFish, you do need to sign what's called the OCA, okay, Oracle Contributor Agreement. It's just a one-pager that you just sign and send back to us so that we can say, hey, this person has the legal protection to contribute code to the GlassFish code base. That's really what that OCA is about. If this seems alien to you, it really shouldn't, because every single open source project, non-trivial one that you'll find out there, will make you go through this step. If you look at Apache, they do so, right? The only exception is perhaps GitHub, right? But other than that, pretty much all mainstream open source projects go through some kind of a legal approval process. So that you have legal protection and the person that is accepting the code also has appropriate legal protection. Okay? Very important if you think about it from the overall GlassFish community's perspective. Right? One legal misstep can put us on a downhill slope and a downhill roll very, very quickly. Right? So this is an important thing to do. And finally, work with the developer, gain their trust, gain commit rights, which doesn't come overnight. Okay, you will have to do some work and prove yourself in order to do that. But at the end of the day, that is what you'll accomplish at the top of the hill, is being able to get that commit privilege and committing onto a well-used, I think also well-respected code base, like the GlassFish code base. And if you do so, be rest assured that we will also respect and recognize your work, okay, at the end of the day. Okay, I guess Steve, back to you.
Okay, thanks for that. This is a very, very short demo, because this is essentially building GlassFish. So, as you say, as Reza said, all the GlassFish source code is online. It's obviously in the SVN repository, and it's very easy to download just with an SVN checkout. So, this directory here has the GlassFish source code in, and essentially the source tree is built into a couple of core directories. And I may get this wrong, but from our research, we've got Nucleus, which is a core application server. And then we've got App Server, which essentially is like a Java overlay on top of the core OSGI application server. And to build GlassFish, we don't make the tests clean install. So that's going to take a little while. Hopefully all the jars are there. So I'm not going to sit while it builds, but it will build in about 5-10 minutes. And if we go back to the slides, very short demo. So it basically builds very simply with Maven. I'll go back in a minute and show you when it's done. If you want to actually see the source code, it's all in Subversion at the moment. You just need to check it out, build it with Maven. And then the release will basically appear in the distributions directory in the GlassFish target, GlassFish.zip, and that is your GlassFish installation. You just take that, unzip it, and run asadmin start domain1. And that is essentially how you can just build GlassFish from source, just like that. It's very, very simple. But then if you want to sort of work on a specific module, again, it's an OSGI core. It's very modular in its structure in the source code. So all you need to do is go to the module directory where you want to edit some code. You can then just build again through Maven. That will push into the target directory in that module, and then you can just copy that into your GlassFish modules directory. And one thing we found is when we're building is if you put so the OSGI, when it boots up Felix, then it will wipe out the OSGI cache just to make sure that your module that you built will be refreshed. So essentially, that's what we need to do. So that will be building for a while. So what I wanted to do as part of this is, it's basically another thing to consider when you're actually building and editing the source code of GlassFish is that it's actually built from many, many other external projects. So you've got the core GlassFish project, and then a lot of the JE implementations are built in separate Java.NET or other projects. For example, Jersey, Tyrus, HK2, which is the core dependency injection kernel, Felix from Apache, Eclipse Link, and many others. So the problem that you may see if you're trying to fix bugs in GlassFish, it may not actually be in GlassFish, it may be in an external project. We've also been looking at picking bugs on GlassFish on Jira, so all the bugs for GlassFish are on Jira. The problem with a lot of Jira tickets, from my experience, is a lot of them are more support tickets than actually bugs in GlassFish. So it's like, I deployed my app and it didn't work, and actually disregarding those and working out which ones of those are real bugs and which ones are actually just people seeking support is probably quite tricky. I don't know if Oracle could be better at maybe bouncing the ones that aren't real bugs and getting them out of Jira, and that might cause some kickback, I suppose, in the community. But to be honest, a lot of them need to be bounced into forums rather than into a Jira. And we've seen in other projects that sometimes if you kick someone out of Jira but point them to, say, a forum, or make them open it as a forum entry instead, it reduces some of the kickback you may get when you do that. Shall see if my build is built. Oh, still going. Nearly there. So, part of this is a BOF, not a presentation. So, what I wanted to do, and the two people out here that have not from GlassFish, or Oracle, or CGP2, is basically work out what people need to help them to contribute. I mean, we've been, let's say we've run the GlassFish User Group in London. We do a lot of consultants in application servers, so we have a lot of customers that use GlassFish in production. And so we've asked them around features and things, and which we'll come to in a minute. And a lot of those features are never things that Oracle are going to build, as we'll see, because they're just not core Java EE, but the things that they care about running application servers in their environments. So just trying to get some ideas of, two guys there. What would stop you? What would help you contribute to GlassFish?
What I need is time.
Time.
Yeah.
That's the same for all of us, isn't it? Have you ever tried, anybody?
I submitted bugs, but I've never actually tried to build the code.
Okay, so you submitted bugs. So how did you work out it was a bug?
What's that?
How did you work out it was actually a bug?
Well,
Have you debugged GlassFish?
I've written 3 books on GlassFish.
Okay.
So sometimes I go into things that not a whole lot of people do day to day. So I find things. I was trying to include a chapter, one of the chapters in my book was on security, and I wanted to integrate GlassFish with LDAP and to use LDAP for security. And I can't remember, it's been a while, but it wasn't working right.
Was it the admin or was it the users?
No, you just used it for an application,
okay.
Yeah, and I submitted a bug, and I saw that I got assigned to somebody automatically. I don't remember, I think I saw an email address, so I hunted that person down on the internet, found him on LinkedIn, and sent him a message on LinkedIn and everything. Eventually they worked on it, but I couldn't reproduce it, so that was it. So.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
I downloaded the source code and I've taken a look at it, but never dug in and tried to debug and fix anything. But it is pretty easy to read from what I've seen. I've not.
It's once you trawl the pure source code point of view, there's a lot of boilerplate building distributions, building externalizing Felix jars from other jars, and there's a lot of sort of boilerplate construction stuff in there that isn't code. And once you get through that, it's not too bad. And it is incredibly easy application service to debug. I mean, you can actually set it in the console to set the debugger flags, and actually you have all the source code there, and it does seem to work. Unlike debugging some complex application servers, one of the simplest things to do is just to put a new breakpoint right in the middle of the depths of what you're looking at, and then that'll give you the stack, which will then give you a great idea of actually how the thing is constructed, and which modules are calling which modules. So
I was going to say, I've not looked at the GlassFish site lately, but I was kind of curious, is there actually a page that describes how to do the build?
there is.
Yes,
it's
there is.
coming out the end.
Okay.
It's actually not that. It's not very complicated. How do we see?
And maybe even on the page, if it would detail out some of the steps like Reza had mentioned, how you could contribute.
Yeah.
Something.
There is actually a contribute page on the website now.
Is there? Okay.
So that's built. So basically that's how long it takes to build GlassFish. And so the app server will actually be in app server distributions, GlassFish target. Oop. So it's actually, that is basically the zip file that you're going to unzip to create GlassFish installation. So It doesn't take a lot of setup other than maybe saying increasing the memory of your maven process, but that's about all we had to go through. And the other one is what features, and I've got a list on here that we basically polled a lot of our customers of what they'd like, over and above Java EE, obviously, because that comes as standard, and that's what Oracle's focus, and that's right. Is there anything that you would like from GlassFish that isn't there already?
Well, I downloaded Adam Bean's project, Lightfish,
Okay.
which provides a little bit above and beyond, the standard way for monitoring GlassFish for memory, and you get to see the processes that are running, and gives you more detail onto what's going on within GlassFish. And I like that feature to be added. Something that would give server admin a little bit more insight as to what's going on, because sometimes, one of our users will go to visit one of the applications and they'll just get nothing, and so then I'll have to go and restart the GlassFish server. And what's that?
Have you tried mission control? This is JDK too.
I haven't tried it
That might be a good option as well.
on the actual server.
You have to be careful with mission control though, don't you? It's a licensed feature of the JVM, isn't it?
You can use it for development.
Yeah.
For development, yeah.
Yeah. That's my side.
Yeah, if you're building GlassFish, yeah. So just fix that bug, and then you could use it.
But don't put it on your production server.
Yeah.
That is actually one of the things that came up.
For every bug? I mean, if you can't reproduce it on a development environment, then how are you supposed to fix it? So that's where that mission tool that comes back. And if you can't reproduce it on your development environment.
Yeah, I mean there are many production problems you can't reproduce in development environments. So, but that's just from experience. Just because of the mixed workload is where you probably, in theory, could reproduce it, but it's the level of mixed workload that is very difficult to reproduce.
True. But sometimes that's exactly what you do need, because
Yeah.
then you finally find the problem. It's like, oh, I thought it was this, but in reality it's this. Because you have to go through the steps of setting that environment up, and then you realize, hey, what did I miss?
Yeah, because we came across one in single sign-on recently, which was a Heisen bug, because we put some more extra logging in to fix it, to try and diagnose the problem. And we compiled all the single sign-on, and then putting the extra logging made it all go away. Never came back on production, so it's running an extra on that client site. I mean, these are the crazy things that we've been asked. We've been around, let's say we have quite a lot of GlassFish customers from a consultancy side, and these are things that obviously some of them are in Oracle's remit, but most of them are not likely to happen because it's very unlikely. But these are actually genuine customer requests, and none of them are from us. One of them was to finish IOP on using Grizzly. So I imagine that's a very specific requirement for something people use very old Java EE, J2EE applications. Another one was to put in, obviously, Hazelcastle JSR 107. The theme that we saw was that the people wanted more session stores. They wanted Memcached, Mongo, whatever, the net, Redis, whatever the favorite flavor of the month was on key value stores. They wanted DevOps integration, because they're all building servers into Chef, Puppet. How that actually you get DevOps integration other than maybe building a Chef package or a Puppet package for it is a slightly different question. Someone was asking, one of our customers was asking for OpenStack APIs built into the GlassFish, so they could access the blob stores and those sort of things through OpenStack. And then there was an interesting request to take a distribution of GlassFish, which is very much like GlassFish Nucleus, and actually just create it as a microservices release. So package up JAX-RS, JPA into a very small kernel. All of these things are possible. And then more longer things, well, more complicated thing like elastic clustering. So doing away with the DAS and doing that sort of peer-to-peer cluster of GlassFish servers. And one that came up many times was a simple monitoring console. But these are things that no one's going to expect the core open source project to create, because they're not the sort of periphery around it. And I think a lot of the contributions that people could make, and GlassFish is they're fundamentally a modular OSGI framework, and a lot of these things can be built as external modules that can be plugged into the GlassFish core by people outside. And what we're trying to do really is create a sort of community around that area to build around the GlassFish core of people who can create these integrations to things which may be just cool and trendy, but they generate the buzz around and make it feel that it's not, you know, a noughties or a 1990s application server, that it's actually, you know, in doing the things that people need to do at this day and age. So what we're trying to do through the London GlassFish User Group and through our sort of outreach community work is actually to gather these requirements and then try and kick off projects to build the pieces which are buildable reasonably quickly and have the most sort of user need, really. So these are key links that I've created. So we've got glassfish.org, there's a page on how to contribute. As Reza said, if you get involved in Java 7, you can use the doc.jsr. There are full build instructions. Here's the aquarium. And part of what we're trying to do is we've got a SVN sync to GitHub. So you can actually use GitHub to browse the source as well. So which makes it more familiar to people. And that's it. Any questions? Or any more thoughts? I mean, how do you see GlassFish? You've written books on it. How do you see it in the market at the moment?
Well, my latest book is selling fairly well. The Java EE 7, so that's a good thing. In general, this whole thing of losing commercial support and members of the community that are well respected putting down GlassFish, I'm a little bit worried that the perception out there might be that it might not be worthwhile to use GlassFish or whatever.
Yeah, and we've been trying to counter that to some extent, in the level that we can. And what we see, because let's say where we came from, we are fundamentally a consultancy company, or were, but we do WebLogic, WebTV, GlassFish, JBoss, we don't care. Basically, if we've got JE problems, we'll fix them. And we've actually seen that, Java. We're actually seeing that GlassFish, actually, I think, past year or two, it has, I think the actual attention might have actually been, to some extent, positive. I know it's been put down within the community. It's like, in the UK, there's something called the Westminster bubble, which is where you get politicians talking to politicians, and they don't know what's going on in the real world. And I think, to some extent, the bloggers...
That's not true here in the US at all.
There's the Westminster bubble in the UK, it's a Washington bubble. And I think, to some extent, some of that blogosphere, Twitter stuff, is similar to that.
It could be.
We're actually seeing more interest in it than there was before, because actually GlassFish was pretty small in the UK compared to, say, WebLogic, which is pretty big, or JBoss. And that's actually picking up. We've actually seen quite a bit of interest in GlassFish as a new server. And I think it just needs messaging around that it is actually, when Sun, before they were purchased by Oracle, had done all that work to make it a brand new OSGI lightweight container, and then sort of got purchased, and all that messaging sort of disappeared. I remember being at JavaOne when that was all pushed out there when GlassFish 3 came out. And that's sort of been subsumed, I think, for a year. So we're actually seeing a bit more buzz around GlassFish at the moment, especially sort of younger people that don't remember J2E and things like that. So I don't have that. I don't have the spring sort of Java EE perspective of things. So yeah, I think it's quite positive. But if we can build buzz around how it links into all the rest of the community, I think that's where it will have the biggest impact. So.
I think that the 4.1 release was good. I think it's important to continue having, official releases on a every once in a while, either twice a year or even quarterly would be, pretty ambitious, but it's good to have the releases come from Oracle, because then that gives a little bit more, emphasis that it's not going away, that it is an important piece of Oracle, so I think that's important for the community to see.
Yeah, one of the questions you get asked is it going away? So a lot of the messaging is just that, the stuff that is starting to come out now is good, because that's reassuring some of the people that actually do use it in production. So they're not going to just change because it's fashion, because it's painful to do so.
Well, if it's going away, I'll have to start working on my resume.
So,
I mean, but keep in mind that it's the reference implementation is a requirement, right? We have to do it, and it's not all that much work. Yeah, relatively speaking, right? So obviously, it's still work to add incremental support for the web console and command line changes as EE moves forward, right? So, we've got JSON binding, the foundation's already been laid. So, I'm not too concerned about GlassFish moving forward by adding those things on top of the RI. Some of the more interesting areas are things like, well, what happens if we have, let's see, I'm thinking of something that might come in, where you got maybe something like, let's say we have a distributed data grid API or something, right? And maybe it has to hook into GlassFish clustering or something, right? Or people want to replace Shoal which is the current, underlying of a GlassFish clustering with a data grid, right? And again, I think, very hypothetically and abstractly, right? That starts to become a little bit of a tougher issue because it's making major changes, right? To an area that's not really anymore the primary focus, right? But as it comes down to, some of the things I saw up there, the chef, the puppet, sorry, I'm just going from memory, right? Some of those things sound like really good ways that the community can really, I think, improve the overall experience with using it, right? OpenStack API integration, yeah, some of these other ones are a little bit tougher. Like elastic clustering for the clouds is probably going to be a tough one because for the community to kind of take on, just because the complexity potentially. If GlassFish already kind of does let you add and remove instances from a cluster, but the testing around that is going to be killer, I suspect. I know that the web logic can dynamically add and remove stuff, not really elastically yet per se, but that's just a lot of work. And it's you got to be pretty intimate with the code to do some of that. Let's see. Session stores. So what you're saying is store the HTTP session in.
Instead of in Shoal, put it into say Hazelcast or Mongo or say the latest key value, popular key value store.
Yeah, GlassFish 3.1 already does that with Coherence Web. But it's a commercial only feature. Right? So people want to see that moved in a solution.
And I think that's a fairly easy-ish one to do in the community. It may need some core changes, but probably only some drop downs and things like that. So,
what was the use case for that, out of curiosity?
Lack of confidence in Shoal, I think.
Okay.
As it not because it necessarily doesn't work, but because it is not under active development.
Right.
That's obviously the Hazelcast one, but not when you go into Mongo Memcache. That's to share sessions with different applications.
Right. And that's what Coherence Web can do as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting observation, though, because, in all reality, projects come and go, so in that particular sense, they say lack of confidence. you know, I mean, everybody would know, you know, 10 years ago, the landscape was totally different. You know, it's just, how do we cater to the landscape, right?
Yeah.
That's, you know, obviously John already said it, you know, we're looking at incremental stuff to add so that it stays viable as a platform, but that's where, you know, the community comes in as well.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is when we did actually go out, most of the features they wanted weren't GlassFish features. It was more that interaction with the sort of modern software community that's out there now, and having that stuff available out there. Not necessarily out of the box for GlassFish, but just out there as a set of tools that were available from somewhere.
Because you know, I mean, I'm the JSF/NBC guy, so because if I read this, there's nothing for me here.
No.
You know what I mean? But on the other hand, there is a lot of stuff that could be done. You know, so I think it kind of depends on the mindset of who wants to contribute and what is their, you know, core focus. You know, and I think that that's the messaging that I would want to give is like, okay, if you want to contribute, find your strength and try to contribute there. Don't, you know, say, okay, I'm going to contribute to GlassFish. No, it's contributing to each of the subparts. You know, find your subpart.